Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night of the local time. The buffer offensive operation is about to start. Today the Russian experts published additional information about the concentration of forces of the Ukrainian army on the borders between Belgrad and Kharkiv, and according to information we have, the main concentration of Ukrainian forces currently located between the cities Bogadukhov, Dergachi and Volchansk, and according to information we have, there are around 20 brigades that Ukrainians have on this direction. The next area of Ukrainian concentration of forces goes through Kharkiv, Chuguyev and then to Kupiansk. And also don't forget that Ukrainians keep always around 30 brigades in the area of Kupiansk with the purpose to slow down or to stop the Russian offensive in the area. So if we summarize everything, the weakest position of the Ukrainians is the area between Vovchansk and Dvurechne. So let's return back to map for the best understanding of the situation. So according to the Russian military experts, the main concentration of Ukrainian forces is located on this area, Bogadukhov, Kharkiv and Volchansk. So this is the main concentration area, and there are around 20 brigades. The next concentration of forces is located on the line Kharkiv, Chuguyev and Kupiansk. This is additional area where the Ukrainians keep around 30 brigades with the purpose to slow down the Russian movements in the northern Kupiansk direction. And as you can see, the weakest Ukrainian positions are located between Vovchansk and Dvurechne, this area, and this is the territory that Ukrainians recently announced as the area of forced evacuation. So very likely the Ukrainians realized, or maybe they managed to, let's say, read the Russian plans about the further offensive operation, and this is exactly the territory the Russians are planning to attack according to probably the Ukrainian plans or Russian plans. So that's why the Ukrainians announced evacuation, and soon they will try to turn this area into the stronghold with the purpose not to allow the Russians to attack. When talking about this direction, the Ukrainians continue bombing and attacking Belgrad. According to information we have, just during the previous 24 hours, 5 civilians died as a result of Ukrainian multiple launch rocket systems strike. Furthermore, we got some additional details in the village by the name of Kozinka, the area of main clashes, and today we start receiving updates of Ukrainian FPV drone strikes against the Russian forces on the edge positions of the town, which completely confirms the Russian control over the territory without any presence of the Ukrainians in the area. On this video, for example, we can see the Russian soldiers moving on the track, on the, let's say, car, along Kozinka, along the streets of where the main clashes took place just a few days ago. So as you can see, the area is completely secured without any presence of the Ukrainians. The Russian truck, the Russian vehicle, car was moving along the street, let's say further to the north. So that means that there are no more Ukrainians here. Maybe there were some Ukrainians on the mirror street, but we have the video of Ukrainian FPV drone strike against the Russians. Now we are moving further to the south, and probably the most important updates and the most interesting information is going to come during the next few days from Siversk direction. We have additional videos of FPV drones, of FPV droning of the Ukrainian forces to the south, west of Razdolovka, and to the southeast of Fedorovka. The Russians were bombing and attacking the Ukrainian forces with FPV drones, with artillery strikes, trying to clear the area and to prepare the foothold for further offensive operation. So if you remember, during the previous days we were talking a lot about the territory, and we discussed together a lot of time that the Russians are pretty let's say focused in the area, pretty active in this area, and all these things confirms that very likely the Russians do have some plans for further offensive operation. If we increase the numbers of days since the beginning of March, we see the Russian concentration. The Razdolovka was under very heavy fire, and now we see the Russians are bombing, or were bombing the roads, the main roads that they might use for further offensive operation. Furthermore, today we got additional report from another Russian source from the ground. They're saying that the Russians are getting closer and closer to Razdolovka, and according to the Russian military experts on the ground, maybe officers, maybe soldiers, maybe military press or something like this, the distance is around, let's say, of I don't know how to say, of short rifle fire. The Russians are about to establish control over the hill in the area, and the difference between the heights of the hill and the Ukrainian positions is around 60 meters, which allow the Russians to establish complete strategical control over the territory. Once again, during the next few days, I expect receiving more updates, even some geolocations and some videos from inside of Razdolovka with a very fierce and heavy clashes between the Russians and the Ukrainians. Now we are moving further. We are moving to Chasov Yar, Bakhmut direction, Artemovsk. After 2 days of operational pause, the Russians start publishing additional videos of bombings of the eastern, let's say, block of Chasiv Yar. On this video, we can see the bombings of farms or some residential area to the east, on the east, and on this video, we can see the fabbing of another positions, very heavy explosions, probably some ammo depots were destroyed, very powerful explosions, as you can see. And for now, the Russians still haven't started any offensive operation on the ground, but very likely the Ukrainians will be forced to fall back or even to surrender. And about surrender, today we got a very important update from the Donetsk-Avdiivka direction, to be more precise, from the village by the name of Georgievka. During the previous days, the Russians were bombing and attacking this territory heavily. We remember a lot of attempts from the Russian side to attack along the tree lines, to attack in direction of Krasnogorovka. The Russians were attacking in direction of Georgievka and so on. Today we got another video of how the Russians were fabbing the Ukrainian positions, or probably reinforcements that were sent by the Ukrainians from Kurakhova or Maximilianovka to the line of combat contact in Georgievka. So all these things I'm trying to tell you is just to describe the situation and the things that happens here. And today we got the video from the 59th Motorized Brigade. These are soldiers of 59th Motorized Brigade. There are around 18 soldiers, the entire platoon, and probably in the center is the head of this platoon. And he's saying that a few days ago they received an order to start movements towards Georgievka, to replace some soldiers there or reinforce them or something like this, to help them to repel another Russian attack. And they start moving, and he's saying that during their movements somewhere in the vicinity of Maximilianovka, between Maximilianovka and Georgievka, his platoon got under Russian artillery and aviation fire. As a result of those attacks, they received let's say 3, 4, 5 wounded or some, and around with code 200. And later he reported that after the Russians stopped bombing them, they managed to regroup and continue movements, and they reached the destination, so the line of combat contact in Georgievka. But he says that when they arrived on the line of combat contact, they discovered that the forces that were let's say sent to reinforce, there were no forces already. They were always everyone was already dead. So, or maybe there were like 4 or 5 soldiers and dozens, tens of let's say wounded, and tens of lost soldiers and loss of Ukrainian armed forces. So that's why when this platoon arrived on the line of combat contact, this commander says that he decided, and he of course had some discussion with his soldiers, and they decided to surrender. Not to return back to Ukraine, but basically to surrender. And he established communication with Russian officers and asked them to take them, the entire platoon. And he also, during the video, says that they're asking Russian military authorities not to include them into the lists for exchange. So you know that when there is exchange process, the parties, either the Russians or the Ukrainians, they try to, let's say, negotiate and try to, let's say, create a list whom they want to return back to home, let's say from the prison, from the prisoners and so on. So they ask Russians not to include them into the exchange list, because they understand that either they will go to the prison because they surrendered, or they will be sent once again to the line of combat contact, where the chances to survive, let's say, is coming to zero. And he also says that he's not, and his soldiers are not going to fight for Zelensky, because it's less useless and it's better to stop the war. So this is the situation. So because of this video, I believe we can make a conclusion that very soon entire Georgievka will fall and the Ukrainians will completely defeated and will be forced to fall back. So we're expecting additional updates from the territory. The Russians continue bombing Krasnogorovka with FABs. Additional FAB 1500 was arrived in the area, dealing significant damage. But for now, the Russians still haven't started any ground operation. But with Georgievka updates, I believe that the same thing soon we're going to receive from Krasnogorovka as well. Let's talk about Avdiivka direction. As you can see, we have almost nothing from the area, but we have a lot of, let's say, Telegram and post reports and something like this from social media. And according to them, the Ukrainians completely abandoned their positions in the town by the name of Orlovka, and the Ukrainians abandoned Toninka as well, either the farms to the west west and the residential area to the northwest. So for now we don't have, let's say, geolocations or Ministry of Defense report, but maybe today the Russians will provide additional information during the daily report of about the situation on the ground. For now, Berdichi is 50-50, maybe not 50-50, but maybe, let's say, a little bit in Ukrainian favor. Today we got additional videos of Ukrainian FPV drone strikes in the central part, which confirms the complete Russian control over the territory. So the clashes continues, for now without any changes on the ground, almost no changes on the ground. We haven't received anything from Zaporozhye direction, the same as from Kherson direction. Additional reports and updates we continue receiving about the construction of the railways, additional railways that goes from the mainland from Rostov-on-Don towards Crimea. The Russians are about to finish this construction, and after that they can even close Crimean bridge by themselves, because after the build of these railways, the Russians will be able to reduce completely any risks of losing the, let's say, supply and support of the southern of Kherson, Zaporozhye, and Crimea region. And so we'll see what is going to be next. And obviously the Ukrainians will not be able to destroy the railways with the missiles, but obviously the next months we're going to see more attempts to attack Crimean bridge. Furthermore, we got some updates from Dnipro. According to information we have, the wounded soldiers from the borderlands of Belgrad are sent to Dnipro, because the hospitals and the let's say are completely fully loaded with the wounded soldiers. So that's why the Ukrainians are forced to send their wounded soldiers very far from the, let's say, line of combat contact. Additional reports we continue receiving from Kiev. As a result, since the beginning of the year, according to the Ukrainian sources, the Russians dropped 3,500 bombs on the positions of the Ukrainian armed forces since the beginning of 2024. Of course, significant number. And I'll remind you that, correct me if I'm wrong, France promised to send Ukraine probably a few months ago maybe 40 bombs, let's say in February, just compare, just 3.5 thousand per 3 months and 40 bombs from the Ukrainian side just per month. Of course, the difference is very big. Very interesting details are coming from the United States of America. Recently, Lindsey Graham visited Kiev, urges to pass mobilization law, and of course crazy updates. And when I was reading these reports, I was very shocked by the way how this political behave himself. He was forcing and asking Ukrainians to start mobilization, people to force young people under 25 to fight. And from the other side, we see that the United States of America start sending any help, any military aid to Ukraine. But from the other side, they're saying, we're not going to send you weapon, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't fight. You need to mobilize more, and everybody should fight. You should die for Ukraine. And so it's like, it's not very good, the thing that I can tell about the situation. Furthermore, we got some more reports about the New York Times, and according to them, America pulls back from Ukraine, and of course, this obviously going to lead to some tragedies to some people. I'm talking about those who were involved in the crimes, and the things that led the situation between Russia and Ukraine to the things that we can see right now. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel. Put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.